Right now, somewhere behind 3 layers of security, in a house with more rooms than he'll ever walk into, there's a man who can buy almost anything on Earth. Except one thing. He can't buy a single phone call from someone who just wants to talk to him. Not his money, not his name, just him. He has assistants who know his coffee order, bodyguards who know his blind spots, and investors who know his net worth down to the decimal. But not one person left who knows him. This is the story of how a kid who once gave away his lunch money to fund a friend's science project became someone nobody can reach anymore. And by the end, you'll understand exactly which moment broke him. Because it wasn't the moment he got everything. It was the moment right before. He was the kid who took apart the family radio at age 9. Not to break it, but because he needed to know how the sound got inside the box. His parents weren't rich. His shoes had holes in them by spring, and his mother patched them with tape that never quite held. But in his bedroom, wires hung from the ceiling like vines, and every evening his best friend climbed through the window instead of using the front door, because that was their thing, their ritual, their secret entrance into a world only the two of them understood. They built things together, nothing that worked mostly. A radio that only picked up static, a robot made of a toaster and a bicycle chain. A treehouse alarm system that woke the entire street instead of just them. It didn't matter. What mattered was the laughing, the failing, the trying again until 2 a.m. while his mother yelled up the stairs to turn the lights off. He used to say, "When I build something real, I'm giving you half of it." Not because he thought he'd succeed, because sharing was the only way building felt good to him. That promise would follow him for years. Long after he stopped remembering he'd made it. Years later, in a cramped apartment that smelled like instant noodles and burnt coffee, the idea finally clicked. Something small, something that solved a problem nobody else had noticed. He and his friend worked in shifts, one sleeping while the other coded, trading off like a two-person relay race towards something they couldn't quite name yet. When it finally launched, nobody expected what happened next. People didn't just use it, they loved it. Strangers sent messages saying it changed how they worked, how they lived, how they felt understood for the first time. He printed out the first 100 thank you messages and taped them above his desk, right next to the whiteboard still covered in their old, failed sketches. His friend used to joke that they'd read the messages out loud like bedtime stories. Two guys in their 20s, high on nothing but purpose and cheap pizza. It was the happiest either of them had ever been. Not because of what they had, but because of who they had it with. But happiness, when it grows this fast, tends to attract people who didn't build it, people who only know how to measure it. The offer came wrapped in a compliment. A man in an expensive coat told him his vision was the future, and future, apparently, needed funding. Millions of dollars, just like that, in exchange for a piece of something that used to belong only to two friends and a shared dream. He said yes because he told himself it meant helping more people faster. His friend wasn't so sure. "This isn't about money," his friend said quietly, and he replied, "It's never just about money. But money helps." It was such a small sentence, almost forgettable, except it was the first time he'd ever disagreed with the one person who knew him before any of this existed. The check cleared. The apartment was replaced with an office with a view neither of them had asked for. And somewhere in the space between those two rooms, we quietly started becoming I. The real fracture happened on an ordinary Tuesday in a glass conference room, over a decision that seemed small at the time. His friend wanted to slow down, protect the people who trusted them, keep the thing they built the way it was meant to be. He wanted to grow, scale, prove the investors right. Voices were raised. Old jokes weren't funny anymore. And at the end of that meeting, his friend didn't storm out. He just quietly said, "You used to build things to give them away. Now you're building things to keep." Then he left the company, and more than that, he left the friendship, the window he used to climb through, the noodle apartment memories, all of it, gone in a single afternoon. That night, alone in his brand new office, surrounded by furniture that still smelled like plastic wrap, he reached for his phone to call the one person he always called after a hard day, and realized for the first time that the number would just ring and ring. Grief, when you're ambitious enough, can be rebuilt into fuel. He threw himself into growth like a man running from something he couldn't name. The company expanded past anything either of them had ever imagined. Competitors were bought out or crushed. Decisions that once took a group conversation, snacks, arguments, and a whiteboard now took him 30 seconds, alone, in a room where nobody argued back anymore, because nobody dared to. He told himself this was strength, independence, the price of vision. What he didn't notice, at least not yet, was how quiet his calendar had become outside of meetings. Every conversation now had an agenda. Every smile in the room was pointed at his title, not at him. Somewhere along the way, he stopped noticing the difference. By the time he was worth more than some countries' economies, he lived in a house with rooms he'd never even stepped into, staff who were paid to agree with him, a security team that knew his schedule better than any friend ever had. People called him constantly, but always to ask for something: money, a meeting, a favor, a photo. He started noticing a strange thing. He couldn't remember the last time someone had called him just to see how he was doing. Not how's the company, not how's the valuation, just how are you? He had everything a person could measure, and somehow that made the unmeasurable things, a real laugh, an honest conversation, someone who knew him before any of it, feel further away than ever. He bought a bigger house that year. It didn't help. Late one night, unable to sleep in a bedroom the size of his childhood home, he found an old photo buried in a drawer he hadn't opened in a decade. Two kids, hunched over a toaster wired to a bicycle chain, grinning like idiots, certain they'd just built the future. He didn't recognize the boy on the left as himself at first, not because the face had changed that much, because the joy in it had. He picked up his phone, the same phone that could summon a private jet in minutes, and scrolled through hundreds of contacts. Investors, executives, assistants. Not one single number he could call at midnight just to say, "Hey, remember when?" He set the phone down without dialing anyone. Nobody to call. That was the whole discovery. Not a scandal, not a betrayal. Just an empty contact list where a best friend used to be. So here he is, right now, behind those 3 layers of security, in that house with more rooms than he'll ever use, richer than he ever imagined possible as a kid with holes in his shoes. He built an empire people study in business schools. He's on magazine covers described as visionary, ruthless, brilliant. What they don't put on the cover is this: somewhere in that mansion tonight, he is completely, entirely alone, and has been for years. And the strangest part is that he did everything right by the only scoreboard he ever let himself believe in. He won. He just never noticed that somewhere along the way, the game changed. And winning stopped including the one thing he actually wanted in the first place: someone to share it with. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you in the next episode.